They say nature always remembers. I learned that the hard way the night a dam the HOA built on my land cracked open like a wound, unleashing a wall of muddy water that tore through their fancy clubhouse. I stood on the ridge, soaked to the bone, watching the same people who'd mocked me now screaming for help as their dream washed away. That's when I realized. Land doesn't take sides, it just settles debts. I've lived here most of my life. My father handed me this place with a firm handshake and one sentence that stuck with me ever since. You never really own the land, you just care for it long enough to pass it on. The creek that ran through my property was more than water. It was family history. My wife and I planted our first orchard beside it. My son learned to fish there. That stream cooled my hands after long days fixing fences or painting the old barn. It was part of my rhythm, until the day someone decided it wasn't mine anymore. It started one spring morning. I was checking the southern fence line when I saw something bright sticking out of the grass, an orange stake. Then another, and another. They lined up in a crooked rectangle that cut right through my property, and on each stake someone had written HOA Dev in Sharpie. I followed the trail, heart beating faster with every step. I knew the HOA from the development next door, Silver Pines, run by a woman named Karen Whitlow. Blonde bob, expensive sunglasses, always talking about community improvement. The kind of person who thinks charm and authority are the same thing. When I called the HOA office, no one answered. 3 days later, a white SUV rolled up my driveway, engine running. Karen stepped out like she was arriving at a real estate showing. She didn't say hello, just smirked and told me, "You should have known this was coming. Phase 3 needs a water feature and your creek's the best candidate." I laughed, mostly from disbelief. "That's not how annexation works," I said. She tilted her head, all fake patience. "You'd be surprised what a motivated community can accomplish." The next morning, I woke to the sound of engines, bulldozers. 3 of them. They were clearing brush by the creek, ripping out trees my father had planted 40 years ago. I ran down there, yelling until my throat hurt, shotgun in hand, not loaded, just for show. The foreman handed me a paper authorized by Silver Pines HOA for community improvements. It wasn't legal. It wasn't even real. But the damage was. The ground was torn up. My creek scarred. I called the sheriff, but the deputy said it might be a civil matter. I could feel the heat building in my chest, that helpless kind of anger where your words don't matter anymore. I went home, poured whiskey, spread out my land plat on the table, and stared at it until midnight. They weren't confused. They were invading. For the next few weeks, it was a game of quiet aggression. Every time I fixed the fence, new survey flags appeared. Then came tire tracks. Then a trench. I hired my lawyer, Roger Burns, a local who still believed in filing cabinets and common sense. "They're overstepping," he told me, "but they'll keep it murky. They want you to give up before it gets expensive." I told him I wasn't backing down. I installed trail cams, logged every intrusion, took time-stamped photos of every vehicle, every worker. Still, the noise didn't stop. By the second week, I realized they were building something bigger than a pond. They were building a dam, a wall of poured concrete right across the creek, maybe 20 feet wide. It trapped the water like a clenched fist. Downstream, my pasture started drying up. The alfalfa turned yellow, the horses kicked at the empty troughs. When I confronted the crew again, Karen showed up in a long puffer coat, clipboard in hand, acting like a queen addressing a peasant. "We're conducting a hydrological survey," she said, voice syrupy and cold. "This project benefits everyone. Controlled flow, wildlife conservation, recreational access." I cut her off. "It's my land. You're trespassing." She stared right through me. "This isn't your backyard anymore, Mr. Weller. It's a community resource." That line stuck like a thorn. For a while, I started believing maybe she was right. Maybe I was the stubborn old man standing in the way of progress. Nights got longer. The farm felt heavier. I watched the fake lake they'd created creep closer to my orchard and thought, what if? Fighting this ruins me. I sat there one night, lights off, papers spread across the table, wondering if I should just sell and walk away. Then I found it an old manila envelope my father had left me. Inside were the original water rights from 1933, still legally active. It was like hearing his voice again. I called Roger, and his tone changed the moment he read it. "They're violating state water law," he said. "This could shut them down for good." That night, for the first time in months, I slept. We filed the claim, sent everything to the state water board and the county, but the HOA retaliated fast. They plastered my gate with violation notices on approved vegetation, unsafe structures, obstruction of community access. It was laughable and infuriating. Then, two so-called HOA enforcement officers showed up in matching polos, smiling like salesmen. "Evening," Mr. Weller once said. "We're here to inspect your boundary compliance. I didn't open the gate. You step 1 foot on this land," I said, "and you'll be explaining it to the sheriff." They took a few photos and left, but I knew this was far from over. Days later, a state inspector named Denise Yarrow arrived. She walked the dam, quietly tracing cracks with her finger. "This isn't reinforced," she muttered. "And the soil, this is clay. It's unstable." She looked at me serious now. "If you hear groaning shifting or see water seeping through, call me, immediately." A week later, it happened. I found a hairline crack along the southern base, dark water bleeding through like sweat. The idiots hadn't even let the concrete cure. I sent the photos to Denise and Roger, then called a local reporter. Shelby Brantley. She came out with a camera crew, filmed everything, and aired it that Friday night. Her headline read, "Unpermitted HOA Dam at Risk of Collapse." Karen snapped. The next morning, the HOA's website posted a statement calling me a disgruntled landowner spreading misinformation. They painted themselves as visionaries, said I was standing in the way of progress. But nature doesn't care about press releases. That weekend, the rain came. It started soft, just a drizzle on the tin roof, but by afternoon, the sky broke open. Sheets of rain hammered the land, filling the reservoir behind the dam faster than it could drain. I checked my drone feed water level rising, cracks darkening. At 5:43 p.m., I saw a small plume of brown water shooting from the base like a geyser. Then another. I called 911. "This is Edward Weller," I said. "The dam on my property is failing. Their clubhouse is downstream." By 6:30, it happened. A deep, gut-wrenching groan echoed across the valley, followed by a thunderous crack. The southern wall of the dam exploded, and a wave of water surged forward, tearing everything in its path. The reflection lake became a roaring river of mud. The HOA clubhouse glasswood steel was no match. I saw cars float like toys, patio furniture spinning away. And on the balcony, drenched in rain and disbelief, was Karen. She didn't scream. She just stood there staring as everything she'd built turned to chaos. By the time the sheriff arrived, it was over. The clubhouse was half submerged, the lake drained, and the once pristine lawns were just sludge. Karen approached me the next morning, face, pale hair matted. "You did this," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "You did." I showed them the drone footage, the timestamps, the reports from Denise, every ignored warning. One of the county engineers flipped through my folder and muttered, "This whole project was illegal." Within days, the story hit national news. Unpermitted HOA dam fails. Floods luxury clubhouse. Residents turned on the board overnight. Petitions for resignation lawsuits outrage. Silver Pines fell apart faster than that dam. Karen tried to hold a press conference claiming an unprecedented storm caused the failure. But by then, Shelby had already aired a follow-up segment with the engineering report, no permits, no soil test, nothing. Roger and I filed a civil suit trespassing, property destruction, water rights violation, and environmental damage. During discovery, the truth surfaced: emails between Karen and a real estate developer planning to use the fake lake to boost property values by 30%. She'd built the dam not for the community, but for profit. When the judge read those emails aloud, she didn't even lift her eyes. Her countersuit for defamation was dismissed on the spot. In the end, the court awarded full damages plus an injunction no HOA now or ever could claim authority over my land again. Karen disappeared from town soon after. The HOA dissolved. Silver Pines went from glossy brochure to cautionary tale overnight. I didn't celebrate. I just walked back down to the creek, now flowing free again, and crouched beside the water. It was clear, cold, alive. I ran my fingers through it, and for the first time in a year it felt like the land was breathing again. People think winning feels like fireworks. It doesn't. It feels like silence, the kind you earn after fighting too long just to be heard. Because in the end, the truth is simple. Power borrowed without consent always comes due. And water always finds its way.